I had so many most anticipated reads. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm doing did my most anticipated books live up to my expectations? They are my most anticipated reads. They're the books that booktube talks about. They're the books that my friends talk about. And I don't know if you're this type of reader too as well, but sometimes for my most anticipated reads and for books that are very popularized here on booktube and bookstagram, I actually tend to not read them and I put it to the bottom of my TBR list, mostly because I'm deathly afraid that these books won't live up to my expectations, or that they will be the pinnacle of my happiness and that I will never ever find another book to make me as happy as they did, which makes me feel like that if I read it so quickly, I won't have any of those books left when I really need them. So I end up putting it off on my TBR until when the moment is right. But sometimes the moment never comes and I just end up not reading them when it's hot in the moment and when it's actually relevant to everybody else. So I finally decided to dive into the few books that I've been putting off on my TBR and to see if they lived up to my expectations. Everyone and their moms and their friends and their cousins and their dogs have been talking about Emily Henry ever since she has published her first adult romance novel called Beach Read last year. Everyone has been eagerly waiting for a follow-up from the talented author, and I was one of them that absolutely fell in love with Beach Read. I've heard of Emily Henry before because she did write a couple of young adult novels, but unfortunately I never got around to it, and I heard good things about it and they do have stellar ratings on Goodreads, but I just never dove into it. But I picked up her adult romance Beach Read and I loved it a lot, mostly because it was a grumpy Miss Sunshine trope. It followed two characters that were dealing with a lot of emotions and they're dealing with their past and trauma, and they were getting to know each other. They talked a lot about books because they were both authors, and there was a really lovely enemies to lovers romance. I feel like a majority of booktube and bookstagram and people here that just like reading books loved Beach Read, and there are only a handful of people that didn't like Beach Read for whatever reason. So when Emily Henry announced that she was writing another adult romance novel called People We Meet on Vacation, I was obviously one of those people that were waiting eagerly for an arc to come into their Kindle from Berkeley Romance, or just for the book to come into the mail. Now I had an arc of it, but I chose not to read it in the early months of this year because I wanted to save it and savor it whenever I had the possible chance to, mostly because for Beach Read I read the ebook novel and I remember vividly me staying in bed for like 4 hours finishing up that novel because I could not put it down. So I thought that People We Meet on Vacation would be a similar situation where I would want to savor it. So I kept putting it off, and then more and more people started talking about it, and the more it went down on my TBR list, not because I heard bad things, but because I didn't want to read something that was very popular at that time. But now that a couple months has passed since it's published, I finally read it. And if you haven't read it yet, People We Meet on Vacation follows a best friends to lovers romance. It involves our two characters who met in high school, who are opposites of each other. It's an opposites attract romance as well. They're completely different. One is very vibrant. She's very eccentric. She's kind of like the life of the party, and she likes to do things spontaneously. Meanwhile, our hero is more on the quiet side. He's more reserved. He's bookish, and he's known to be kind of like a nerdy character. And they just so happen to form a really strong friendship, and they decide to go on vacation every single year pretending to be people that they're not. Because I feel like when you're on vacation, you have the opportunity to explore a different side of you, to become someone different, and to really pretend to live a different life because nobody around you actually knows who you are, as opposed to you staying in the town that you grew up in. So something happens in the book, and we don't know when we first start reading it, but something happens in the book to disrupt their relationship and to stop their friendship. So we now have two characters who have stopped talking for a long time, but suddenly an event happens where they get to be going on vacation together, and they try to amend their friendship and try to fix it so that they can go back to their past ways. But obviously it's not going to be as easy as it sounds, and that our two characters will have to go through a lot of difficult circumstances and overcome their past feelings for each other in order to have the happily ever after. When I was listening to this audiobook, I was absolutely absorbed into the romance already, because we have our two characters who kind of just bounced off of each other, and the dialogue was super witty. Our main heroine, Poppy, was very eccentric, and she totally grabbed your attention as soon as you picked up the audiobook, or even if you picked up the ebook as well. She has a personality that lots of people want to be around, and also lots of people who are maybe introverted want to be, simply because she is just so captivating. And then our two characters' emotions run pretty deep, but you're just waiting patiently for them to get their stuff together so that they can realize that they could be together in the end. This one, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, so it wasn't a perfect star rating as compared to Beach Read, simply because of 2 reasons. And the 2 reasons include the fact that Emily Henry does a really good job at writing Miss Sunshine and Grumpy trope, so much to the point that I felt like our 2 main characters, Alex and Poppy, resembled our 2 main characters in Beach Read a little too much. If we think about it a little more, our male character is exactly a Control-C and Control-V of Alex in People We Meet in Vacation. And then Poppy can be iffy at times, but she is pretty much the same female heroine in Beach Read as well. So I felt that the lack of creativity definitely gave me a lower rating, because simply put, Emily Henry does a great job at it, but maybe we needed to spice it up a little bit more. And the next thing that kind of lowered my rating a lot more and made me kind of rant a little bit to my friends was simply because I felt that Poppy put a lot of blame on herself for situations that she didn't need to apologize for. I felt like she internalized a lot of the guilt that she had because of the feelings she had for her best friend, without really thinking the fact that it takes 2 to tangle, and that these 2 people were in committed relationships with other people. And during that time when it got a little bit gray in the black and white area, they were both at blame. But Poppy felt like she needed to put it all on her and to apologize and to feel really bad about the situation. So I had to take a star off. Overall, this did meet my expectations for another Emily Henry novel. And of course, I'm going to go pick up more Emily Henry novels for months to come, and also for the next year when her new releases do start. But maybe I'll even revisit her YA romances soon as well. Everyone also has heard of Helen Hoang, and Helen Hoang kind of like took the publishing world by storm with her debut novel, The Kiss Quotient. When we take a look at The Kiss Quotient, we look at the cover and we think that this is going to be a fun romantic comedy. It's lighthearted. It's going to be maybe a little bit spicy, but we definitely didn't expect Helen Hoang to kind of turn up the heat level from 0 to 100 for her debut novel. So ever since The Kiss Quotient, people have been eagerly awaiting for the next releases from Helen, and we got the follow-up novel, The Bride Test, as well. I enjoyed The Kiss Quotient a lot. It was my favorite from Helen so far, and I also really liked The Bride Test. I thought both books had their unique qualities to it, had their unique characters who had unique problems that we may not ever go through, simply because her characters are on the spectrum, and it's more difficult for them when they have to do some daily things, and also including starting a healthy relationship. So when we heard that The Heart Principle was going to be coming out very soon, we were very eager for it. But then the publication date kind of got delayed and things kind of got pushed back. But very loyal Helen Hoang fans have been eagerly waiting for The Heart Principle to finally come published. And finally this year in August, it's going to be released. And I was so lucky enough to receive an ARC from Berkeley Romance, and I thought that I was going to put it at the bottom of my TBR again, and I wasn't going to read it, but I said enough was enough, and that I shouldn't put off books off my TBR list any longer, and I dove right into The Heart Principle. Now, The Heart Principle kind of has a vague description of the synopsis, but it does give hints as to what the book is actually about. So we have our main female heroine, who is a violinist. She's very talented, and she's very detail-oriented with her violin playing. So our female heroine blew up on the internet, took the world by storm by playing a cover of a song, and she got millions of views and she became super popular. And now she has all this pressure that she puts on herself because she wants to continue that momentum and become more and more popular, and she has that internalized pressure too as well. She sees a therapist and she discusses about her recent pieces that she's playing and also what she is expected to do because now she's signed with a record label as well. And then she has a stable relationship with her boyfriend, but turns out her boyfriend actually thinks that in order for them to take the next step, they should branch out and they should explore different options because they have been only dating each other for their entire life. And so her boyfriend decides to have an open relationship and she doesn't want it, but she wants to please her boyfriend. So she goes onto a dating app to hope soon finding someone that is attractive to her and that she can explore herself even though she really doesn't want to. And that's when she meets our hero Quan, who is actually the cousin of our main hero in the Kiss Quotient. And we get to learn more about Quan's story. And they together try to do only a one-night stand that obviously turns into something more. Now, the heart principle definitely has a lot more elements to it than you would expect from the synopsis. And I would actually say that this book leans more on a woman's fiction side a lot of the times, but then it also has a romance half the time too as well. So definitely expect to have women's fiction themes in it where a female character learns more about themselves, learns more about their personalities, goes through tough hardships, goes through life as like any woman would do. And then we have a romance that kind of blows you out of the water, that makes you want to cuddle with someone that you love, and something that will make you warm and flustered inside. So overall, the heart principle, I have to give 2 ratings to it. And if you follow me on Goodreads, and if you don't follow me on Goodreads yet, I highly suggest and recommend you to follow me on Goodreads simply because I'm very active there and you could already see what books I'm going to be talking about next in my videos. I actually gave it 2 ratings. So the first rating is for the romance and then the second rating is for overall the book. So for the romance, I actually gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I liked our 2 characters together. I thought they were cute, but I had some issues with it for being a little bit too insta-love. And then overall, the whole book, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. You get a 3.5 star rating for the heart principle. But on Goodreads, I rounded it up and gave it a 4 stars. I don't know why I'm breaking it down all to you guys, but I find that if you break down some ratings and you give better explanations for it, it helps you have a better expectation of the book that you're going to be picking up. The heart principle met my expectations of a solid novel from Helen Hoang, but it didn't meet my expectations for a romance novel in general. So out of the 3 books, this one is my least favorite. The Kiss Quotient is my favorite, and then it's The Bride Test, and then it's The Heart Principle. Going to an author that we haven't really talked about here on BookTube and also on my channel is Cynthia Eden. I've mentioned her books maybe in 2 videos so far. One of them was in a wrap-up contemporary romance. The other one was in a cozy romantic suspense recommendation video that I highly recommend you to check out if you want to try a new subgenre of romance. But Cynthia Eden is a known popular author for romantic suspense, and also taking a look at her backlisted novels, she actually wrote a lot of P&R romances too as well. But the first romance I ever read from Cynthia Eden was actually called No Escape from War, and I adored that book so much. It was a second chance romance between like a trained officer, killer, like military officer person with a reporter. And then in that novel, we actually get introduced to one of his best friends and one of the guys that was not on his team, but that he closely worked with when they were in undercover missions for the country and they were in wars together and battles together. So we get introduced to this character named Odin, and Odin is definitely one of the biggest cinnamon rolls that you would ever read in a novel this year if you decide to pick up Don't Play with Odin, which is the second novel in the series. When I read No Escape from War, I was desperate for Odin's story. I was clawing at my bed sheets and I was desperately waiting for July 13th to come because that was the release date. And I kid you not, this book I immediately pre-ordered and I actually picked up on the same day of release because I wanted Odin's story so bad. And once I started reading it, I adored it so much. So Don't Play with Odin follows Odin, who is very grumpy, very stoic, does not say much. He is also described to be like 6'4", very well built, and he's intimidating to look at. And lots of guys are intimidated by him, and lots of girls are also intimidated by him. So he's very conscious of his size, and he never wants to hurt people who are smaller than him or who can't defend themselves. Not that he's a very violent person, but when they get into tough situations where they're fighting off enemies, then he has to be very aware of his strength that he has. And our character is working for his friend's like PI office. His friend is War from book number 1, and he is a private investigator. And there he meets our heroine, who comes into his office and asks him to help her with this case that she has. And she suspects that her next door neighbor is actually a serial killer. And Odin's like, okay, I think you've watched way too many crime documentaries, listened to way too many crime podcasts, and read too many cold cases. And he doesn't take her seriously at first, but he's attracted to her severely and wants to get to know her more. So he reluctantly follows her back home and soon realizes that she may be onto something and that she might be actually in danger. So he takes up on the case, and they go on this like crime solving journey, and they get to know each other. Sparks fly, chemistry is kind of sizzling on the pages, and it's just a really great romance. And definitely this one did live up to my expectations for a follow-up novel from Cynthia Eden in the series. No Escape from War, I gave that one a 5 out of 5 stars. You know, I really enjoyed that one. And Don't Play with Odin, although there was some elements to the romance that felt a little bit too fast, a little bit too insta-love, I still really liked it. There were so many scenes in that novel that made me awe in real life because it's just so freaking adorable. So definitely go pick up Cynthia Eden's novels, and definitely pick up her series called Trouble for Hire, which includes these 2 books I just mentioned. An author that I don't talk too much about on my booktube channel, but is an author that I keep my eyes on a lot and that I like to collect her new releases and also read her new releases, is actually Layne. Now, Layne has been a writer for many, many years. She wrote for a wide range of publishers, and depending on the publisher, I feel like it changes the way that she writes sometimes. Obviously, the editors are different. They have different expectations for the writer. So the writer needs to kind of write in the way that the publisher's audience tends to gravitate towards to. So she wrote some love-swept romances. She wrote for Forever Romance, and now she's writing for Galleria Books, which is under Simon Schuster. And then she also wrote for Montlake. So I really liked her Montlake series, which was about like 3 finance bros who are really good at making money, and they are just playboys in general, and they end up falling in love because obviously it's a romance and they too deserve to fall in love. And I absolutely fell in love with Lauren's writing so much that I continued on with majority of her books, and I read a lot of her books that she has published for Simon Schuster, including like the Manhattan series, or I don't even know what that series is called, but it follows like 3 girls who end up dating the same guy, and then they meet at his funeral, and then they each feel like that they've been lied to so much about the relationships and they don't trust men anymore, but obviously they also end up falling in love. So the book that I was really anticipating was this gorgeous novel called To Serve with Love, and this book came out in June, I believe, and it's a fairly short novel. I think it's like around 300 pages, so if you receive it in the mail, do not be shocked that it's super thin, because I was really shocked that it was super thin. Regardless, it's Layne. I really wanted to read it, plus the cover looked gorgeous. It looked like something that I would really like, and the synopsis sounded so cute because it was an enemies to lovers romance. It's an office romance, kind of, and basically our female heroine received this gift when her father died. She inherited this champagne shop in New York City, and now she has to run that business so that she can fulfill her father's late legacy, even though she has her own issues with it, and even though she doesn't know if she wants to pursue her whole life existence and tie it to the champagne shop. But when she takes over the business, she quickly realizes that the business is not doing so well, and that the revenues have been squeezed, and that something is blocking her from being profitable. And she soon realizes is that it's our hero who is in the way, who wants to actually buy up the shop and use that shop space for something else. and now it's the battle between these two main characters. But what's interesting about this book is that our heroine likes to chat on this app. It's not really like a dating app, but it's basically like a dating app where you chat with strangers and you don't know the other person's identity, and it's under names. So the person that our female heroine is texting is actually Sir, and that's why it's called To Sir with Love. And our heroine keeps texting him and actually develops like an emotional attachment and actually feelings for this man that she doesn't know. And then she also starts developing feelings for our hero, who is trying to take over her family business, and now she's kind of stuck between these two men. Overall, this one, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, and I would have to say it did not meet my expectations for a Layne novel. I felt that this book was very boring and also very dry a lot of the times. I didn't feel like that there was a chemistry between our two main characters, which was very frustrating because usually Layne is really good at writing the chemistry and you could feel the tension sizzling off the pages. But this enemies to lovers romance felt a lot flat for me, mostly because I just didn't care that our female heroine was liking our hero in real life when she was spending all her time texting this virtual man on her app. When I saw this next book on NetGalley, I knew I had to get my hands on it. And I know a lot of people here on Romance Booktube and also in the romance community don't like illustrative covers, and they think that lots of publishers are leaning towards this trend and not being truthful with their synopsises, and they don't really give a good indication of what the book is actually about. And it's this whole debate. Do I lean on a specific side of this debate? Maybe, maybe not. I just see pretty covers and I buy them because I want to collect them on my shelf. And sometimes, yes, it's misleading because the book inside is horrible, but also the book inside could be horrible even if the models on the cover are actual people. So this one's called Too Good to Be Real, and it's by Melonie Johnson, and this is from S&P Romance. I actually got an arc of this from the publisher, and then I also got the e-arc of this as well, and I finally read it near and close to release date, so please don't hate me. But Melonie Johnson is an author that I have seen popping up on St. Martin's Press Romance, which she also published Too Good to Be Real on. She has these 3 mass paperback novels that deal with Scott and Highlanders, but they're contemporary romance. When I first saw them on Bookstagram, I really wanted to read because I'm a huge fan of mass market paperback contemporary romance novels. Like literally my whole shelf is like those books because I just feel like those books are really good to me, but I never picked them up. So this is my first Melonie Johnson novel. Did it meet my expectations of another Melonie Johnson novel? I can't say because I've never read one. Too Good to Be Real follows our main female heroine who feels like she's stuck in life, and she actually works for a website where she does content creation. Specifically, she creates quizzes for people to take. So have you ever taken a BuzzFeed quiz before? She's the one actually behind those BuzzFeed trivia quizzes, and so she kind of has a very interesting job, as you could think. But what happens is that the website is not doing too well, and that the bosses are thinking of actually laying off a couple of people. And in order for her to save her job and her position, she has to come up with this grand idea that lots of people can actually buy into and that will actually make the company profitable. So she decides to go on vacation to write a piece of it. So she goes to this hotel, kind of like a bed and a breakfast, and that's where she meets our hero, who is actually running like this organization and this game that's happening at the bed and breakfast hotel place. And they have this very unlikely and cute meet cute where they kind of bump into each other, and then there's seagulls involved, and the seagulls are evil and they keep taking things from our main characters. This one, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars simply because I felt the book was just not for me. I did not care about our main female heroine's friendships with her 2 other best friends. I felt that it was super confusing to have so many characters introduced to us right from the start. And then the spark between our hero and heroine was just not there for me to care. And it was just so random. charm. And also, this book includes a lot of romantic comedy references in it. So if you weren't born in the 1990s, I feel like you're going to have a very difficult time of going through this novel unless you're a big cinephile who like loves to watch movies, and especially like the older romantic comedy movies, because this one has so many references in it that confused me and that made me go, okay, so like I don't know what this book is about. And this book actually reminded me of the romantic comedy movie called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey, because these two characters have two motives and they don't share with each other, so they are basically lying to each other the entire book. So yeah, if you guys want to read a book like this, maybe pick it up, but it definitely did not meet my expectations. But that is it for my video with reading my most anticipated releases. I feel like majority of these releases was centered around the summer months of publication, which is great because that means I'm not too far behind with my new releases. I actually had a couple more releases from this year that I've been putting off that I feel like I want to read as well. So if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments and maybe I can make a new one. One of the books that is on my radar that I never really talked about also is Tessa Bailey's new release called It Happened One Summer. It's basically a book that is inspired by Schitt's Creek Alexa, the character, and I'm excited to read it, but I also am hesitant once again for my reasons because I don't want to be disappointed, and a lot of my friends love that one and I love Tessa Bailey, but I just don't want to be hurt and disappointed. But let me know if you enjoyed this video and let's see if I can make another one. Bye.